A major milestone in every player's career is making an all-star team. It meant that year they were one of the best players in the entire league, or at least it's supposed to. But instead, some years there's been a few all-stars that have made no sense at all as to why they made the team. And maybe none more so than Magic Johnson, because he made the 1992 NBA All-Star game while retired. You see, he made his announcement and retired before that season ever started. Then somehow fans voted him in to play in that year's game. I don't know why or how he was even on the ballot, but he was. And without even playing a single regular season game or technically even being in the NBA at all that year, Magic Johnson was a 1992 NBA All-Star. A couple of other players didn't want him even playing that night, but he did and actually ended up winning All-Star MVP, putting up 25, 9, and 5. And all of that was thanks to fan voting. You see, all the way up until 2017, fan votes accounted for 100% of the All-Star selections, and it caused a lot of problems that we'll cover throughout this video. One of them though is the fact that because Yao Ming was so massively popular in China, he was easily voted into the All-Star game every single season of his career, even the one where he only played 5 games due to injury. And not only that, but he was voted to be a starter too. Sure, his spot on the court was eventually replaced by a healthy player, but looking back, he still went down in the record books as an All-Star that season, and that makes no sense at all. And we saw a lot of similar situations like that play out over the years with guys like Grant Hill, Alonzo Mourning, Yao Ming, Penny Hardaway, and even Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I mean, Kobe only played 6 games when he was voted to be an All-Star in 2014. It was the year he was coming off of an Achilles injury right before he got injured again. But thanks to fan voting, he received more votes that year than Dwayne Wade, Kyrie Irving, Carmelo Anthony, Blake Griffin, and Kevin Love. So he too was named as a 2014 All-Star starter, when he obviously didn't deserve it. And it was a bunch of cases like this that I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit more later. But of course, the reason the league abandoned the 100% fan vote was because in 2016, fans almost got Zaza Pachulia as a starter in the All-Star game over Kawhi Leonard. He was just 14,000 votes away from taking Kawhi's spot that year, and he was averaging 8 points and 9 rebounds a game at the time. Can you imagine the memes that would have gone on for the rest of time had that happened? And thankfully that caused the voting style to be changed right away, because the next year in 2017, the memes continued and Pachulia actually finished second in the Western Conference frontcourt fan voting, meaning that he would have got the starting spot over Anthony Davis. But that was no longer enough to get him in the spot, so he missed the All-Star team altogether. Another odd scenario that played out leading to All-Star appearances that made no sense at all came in 2019, when Adam Silver decided that since it was both Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki's last year in the league, he would make them both honorary All-Stars just to let fans see them one last time since they were legends. But it hasn't been done before or since, and I think there was a reason. Wade played 10 minutes, shot 4 times, and Dirk played 4 minutes. I get wanting to see these guys play, but what are they really gonna do in the All-Star game? Dirk was 40 and averaged 7 points and 3 rebounds, and Wade was 37, putting up 15 a game in the regular season. I get the idea, but we don't need the All-Star game to be filled with older players for nostalgia. It wasn't the only time that we saw an undeserving legend in an All-Star game during their last season though, because going back to the fan votes, fans were the ones who voted Allen Iverson to be a starter in the 2010 All-Star game. He got 1.2 million votes, which was more than both Steve Nash and Tim Duncan. And for a guy that had started his season out with the Grizzlies, then played only 25 games for Philly, averaging 13 and 4, he should have never been in that year's game. And well, actually he wasn't, because before it happened, he stepped away from basketball to be with his daughter because of her health, then wound up retiring at the end of the season. Hey, at least he didn't take anybody's spot that year, but he will still always go down as a 2010 All-Star. Another very odd case came in 1988 with a 41-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his last season, which was by far his worst, where he only averaged 10 points and 4 rebounds a game. But yeah, that was enough for an All-Star appearance apparently. And this one wasn't because of fan vote, it was actually David Stern who chose Kareem to replace Magic Johnson in that year's game, who had just recently tore his hamstring, and what felt very similar to what Adam Silver did years later with Wade and Dirk. David Stern claimed that Kareem received the next highest total of votes from the coaches in their selection of the All-Star reserves. I'm not sure why. Okay, now just a straight up regular season All-Star selection that really makes no sense at all looking back came in 2018. After teams were selecting that year, there was 4 injured players, so those spots had to be filled with replacements. DeMarcus Cousins got injured, so he was replaced with Paul George. John Wall got hurt, so Andre Drummond replaced him. But wait, it gets worse. Kevin Love was dealing with an injury, so they got Goran Dragic Dragic to take his spot. We'll start first with Andre Drummond. Okay, sure, the man was putting up 15 points and dominating the boards with 16 rebounds a night. One of the best season averages we had seen in a very long time, but for Drummond to have made an all-star team when the Pistons had a losing record was wild. And for Goran Dragic to make it while playing for the Heat was even worse. Sure, he was putting up a solid 17-4 as their starting point guard at the time, but they too barely had a winning record, and he was the only all-star from that team that year. It's just weird looking back on, and it also makes you question how Ben Simmons didn't get that replacement spot instead. I mean, he was putting up 16, 8, and 8 in his rookie season on a much better 76ers team. I mean, same position, better stats, better team record, and played more games. That one just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And you know, usually teams with the better records do get more all-stars into the game, but I think in 2015 we took things a little too far, because the first seeded Atlanta Hawks had 4 all-stars that year, in Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Jeff Teague, and Kyle Korver. Both Millsap and Horford were putting up 16 and 7, Teague had 16 and 7 assists a night, and Kyle Korver was averaging 12 points a game, but on an all-time rate of 49% from 3. Listen, I got no problem with Millsap and Horford. They were both all-stars before and after the season. Teague and Korver though is where things get weird. Neither man ever sniffed an all-star appearance besides this one. I mean, nothing else in Jeff Teague's career shouted all-star, but I guess the numbers were good enough that season, with him also being on a winning team. Then for Korver to make it putting up 12 points a night is crazy. I guess it made sense though. There were 4 players that year that couldn't play due to injuries, so technically Kyle was the 3rd string replacement, and that's why he got in. A lot of people forget about that, and everyone else that deserved to get in that year pretty much did thanks to all the injuries. There really wasn't anyone snubbed from the 2014 All-Star game. Plus, him shooting almost 50% from 3 kinda deserved to get rewarded. It's just crazy though, because I can't think of any other spot-up shooter in league history that made an All-Star team before or after Korver did. So it might have made people unhappy, but it really was rare that he ended up with that spot. In 2022, fans were once again made unhappy thanks to Andrew Wiggins. You see, by this point, the rule was changed to players needing 50% fan vote and media voted for the other 50% in order for somebody to be named an all-star starter. Well, that was enough to land Andrew Wiggins the starting spot that year. And listen, in 2022, he definitely should have been an all-star, but a lot of people thought it was a joke that he was going to be starting over guys like Devin Booker, Luka, and Donovan Mitchell. I mean, every other all-star starter was averaging over 25 points a game, while Wiggins was putting up 17. Even Luka was putting up 28, 9, and 8. Booker was averaging 27, 5, and 5, and Donovan Mitchell was putting up 26, 5, and 4, with them all being leaders on their teams. So it was laughable when Wiggins got that spot. And he got it for 2 reasons. He was having a breakout year on the Warriors, who had one of the best records in the NBA, and that's how he got the first 50% of votes. He got the second 50% thanks to getting 3rd place in fan votes due to a strong push from K-pop star Bam Bam, who was a huge Warriors fan and campaigned hard for his fans to vote for Wiggins. And clearly it worked, so I get why people were upset. To be fair though, the entire Western Conference didn't have a single other forward off the bench. So unless they wanted to break up the traditional 2 guard, 2 forward, and a center lineup, Wiggins would have had to make it here anyways. Many fans also weren't happy when Mo Williams made the 2009 NBA All-Star team because, well, he didn't really deserve it. Sure, the Cavs were the #1 seed that year, and sure, Mo was putting up a career high 18 points a game, but when we refer to the early LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers, we always say he had no help at all. No one, not a single person said, but wait, he had one-time All-Star Mo Williams. And there's a good reason why, because he probably shouldn't have gotten that spot to begin with. It also seems to be popular opinion that 2014 Roy Hibbert shouldn't have been an all-star either. And I get where people are coming from, seeing that he was averaging 10 points and 6 rebounds a night on 43% from the field as a big man. But back then, Roy Hibbert was the anchor for that team, and he might not have put up big numbers, but he did all the right things to help them win games. He averaged 2 blocks a night, and him just being out there in the paint really helped those Pacers teams and all their deep playoff runs. It was one of those scenarios that you had to watch and see to believe. But you didn't even have to watch Jamal Magloire to know how terrible his all-star selection was. Because back in 2003 and 4, this man was an all-star for the Hornets, and he pretty much unanimously is the worst all-star selection of all time. He's always #1 on any list you'll see, and it's thanks to him being on a 500 Hornets team where he averaged only 13 points and 10 rebounds a game. He was an average player on an average team with average stats and somehow got selected. Baron Davis also made it that year off the Hornets too, but you're just really telling me that we needed 2 players off of a 41 and 41 team? You're telling me that the NBA had nobody better to offer than Jamal Magloire that year? Well, let's look at who didn't make the 2004 All-Star game. Oh, I don't know, maybe a rookie LeBron James would have been better?